Oh my god, they killed Kenny. South Park is one of the most popular adult animated shows of all time, and one thing its fans will recognize is the many deaths of Kenny McCormick. And today, we're talking about Kenny's long list of deaths, and we ask the question, which one is truly the most gruesome? I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and this is Kenny's Deaths, Gruesome to Most Gruesome. Now, first off, we have a few rules that we have to go over. We won't be talking about any ambiguous or off-screen deaths, or situations where Kenny is revived right after his death. We're also only talking about main series episodes throughout the 24 seasons of the show. And finally, only one death per episode. Our first category is Down with the Sickness, where Kenny dies from a disease or sickness that he picked up during the episode. Our least gruesome death comes from the episode Chickenpox. In this episode, the boys all get infected with chickenpox because of their parents. At the end, while all the boys are in the hospital beds and laughing about the situation, Kenny dies from complications associated with the disease. It is shown that he goes straight from laughing to flatlining, however. The suddenness of the death and the lack of blood makes it the least gruesome. The next death comes from the aptly named episode Kenny Dies. This episode was a major status quo changer, as this seemed to be the death that permanently takes Kenny out of commission. In this episode, very similar to the previous one, he dies of complications with muscular dystrophy. It ranks above chickenpox because the entire episode is focused on death rather than it being a gag. Rounding out the deaths in this category is the episode It Hits the Fan. In this episode, Kenny contracts a weird plague from the voluminous amount of times a certain word is said. At the end of the episode, he dies when he barfs up his intestines and falls over, much to Stan's dismay. This death shows more than usual for a disease-based death, which is why we ranked it as the most gruesome in this category. Our next category is Beaten Down, where Kenny is killed by head trauma, concussions, or being generally beaten. Starting out this category is Jubilee. In this episode, super best friend member and spiritual leader Moses is trapped within a conch shell by Garth. To save Kyle and the Jew Scouts, Kenny slams his head into the conch shell, sacrificing himself to release Moses. Kenny's death in the episode Timmy 2000 is next. While Kenny and the gang are on Ritalin prescribed by a doctor, Cartman starts having hallucinations of Christina Aguilera. Eric sees one of these bugs on Kenny and smashes him in the face with a frying pan, and he falls to the ground. This is higher than Jubilee because this wasn't a self-sacrificial death. The episode Hooked on Monkey Phonics ranks next. Cartman gets a monkey as part of a phonics learning kit that helps him learn how to spell. During the episode, the monkey gets angry and grabs Kenny, slamming him against Eric's bed and dresser and then stomping on him until he dies. Rounding out this category is the episode Starvin' Marvin. A bunch of mutant turkeys are released and the town of South Park fights against them. During this fight, Kenny is knocked down and pecked to death, and one turkey extracts his eyeball. That gory bit at the end is what ranks this death as the worst of this category, and we do see his corpse again later with a rat peeking out. Next up, we have the Strangled Out section, where Kenny is killed from asphyxiation of any kind. Starting out this category, we have the episode Sexual Healing. After a lesson about sex addiction from a CDC agent, Kenny learns of autoerotic asphyxiation. He then does the act while dressed as Batman, but being new to the technique, accidentally commits suicide. But a slightly worse way to go out is shown in the episode Mecha Streisand. While the giant Mecha Streisand is wrecking the town, Kenny dodges multiple objects that could kill him. However, his death comes around while on a playground. He tries to play tetherball by himself. He hits the tetherball and it comes back around, wrapping around him and choking him to death. This ranks higher than the previous solely because this event was shown fully on screen. The next category is Trains and Automobiles, where Kenny is run over by trains, motorcycles, and cars of any variety. Starting out, we have the episode How to Eat with Your Butt. During the events of this episode, Kenny and Cartman are crossing the street when a motorcycle comes out of nowhere and runs over Kenny. This leaves the boy pretty much flattened and Cartman laughs at his misfortune. Next we have A Very Crappy Christmas. While filming The Spirit of Christmas with Kyle and Stan, the three attempt to cross the road, and as they do, a car comes out of nowhere and flattens Kenny, leaving a bloody smear. The episode Cartman Joins Nambla ranks next. After a series of crazy events, Stuart McCormick is put into an ambulance with his wife and son nearby. The ambulance backs up and again flattens Kenny. This death does feel a bit more comedic than the previous two, however, mainly due to the irony that comes from the usage of the ambulance.
God, this must be the 50th time this has happened.
52nd.
The next episode is Do the Handicapped Go to Hell? In this episode, the boys and a group of their friends are heading to church when once again, Kenny decides to cross a street. A massive bus drives by and runs him over in what could be a fun and gruesome Final Destination reference.
He had sins that he didn't confess.
Rounding out this category is Cartman's mom is a dirty S. In this episode, Kenny tries to fix up a go-kart for him, Stan, and Kyle, while Cartman is trying to find his dad. Kenny fixes the go-kart, but he's dragged around behind it, going downhill and hitting multiple bumps in the road as he does. The go-kart eventually stops on some train tracks, where he is soon run over by a train, leaving nothing but a bloodstain. This death is by far the most gruesome in this category, mostly because of the events that led up to it. Our next category is simple enough, Drowned Out, where Kenny dies from drowning, usually in water. Starting this category off, we have super best friends. When cult leader and street magician David Blaine comes to South Park, the boys decide to go to one of his camps. However, this cult is led to committing mass suicide under Blaine's orders.
Sweet salvation!
Kenny ends up being part of this cult and commits suicide by drowning himself in the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool. Right after that, we have the episode P. When the boys go to Pee-Pee's Splash Town, a water park that Cartman loves, their trip turns deadly. It turns out that the water park's water is 98% urine, and once it reaches 100%, a giant tidal wave of urine drowns the park. It turns out that Kenny died by drowning in the flood of pee, his body floating by the boys as they try to fix the problem. This is worse than the previous entry because Kenny didn't do it himself, and drowning in urine is way worse than drowning in water. And rounding out this category, we have the Tooth Fairy Tats 2000. The boys decide to start a Tooth Fairy racket to get money for a Dreamcast. They meet another child named Loogie, who is running a similar racket and has the boys join his crew. When Cartman and the others plan to start up their own racket again, Loogie decides to kill Kenny to send a message. He traps Kenny's feet in cement and drops him in a river, although the river wasn't deep enough to drown him. So Kenny tries to hop out of the river, but falls in a trench in the river, keeping him underwater until he drowns. We can see this whole death and watch as he slowly drowns, which is really dark. Moving on to our next category, we have the non-romantic crushes, where Kenny is crushed by something, crushed against something, or crushed between things. The death from the episode Mr. Hanky's Christmas Classics starts out our category. After a long episode of singing Christmas songs, Kenny and the rest of the cast started singing Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. During the song, a chandelier falls from the ceiling and crushes Kenny. The next episode is Helen Keller the Musical. During a musical that the children of South Park are in, Timmy adopted a turkey named Gobbles. This turkey was then the victim of an assassination attempt from Cartman. However, the stage light aimed for Gobbles instead crushes and kills Kenny. So technically, we can blame this death on Cartman. The next death comes from the episode Ike's Wee Wee. While walking through a graveyard with his friends, Kenny falls into an open grave. While in the open grave, the gravestone that marked the spot crumbled and fell, crushing him 6 feet deep. Moving on to the episode Gnomes. In this episode, Kenny and crew end up infiltrating the lair of the Underpants Gnomes. While in their lair, a minecart filled with underpants falls off the track and crushes Kenny. It's a quick death, but the reactions of the kids and the gnomes show how gruesome the death was.
Gross! We squished him like a bug!
The episode Cherokee Hair Tampons is next. While Stan is worrying over the possible death of Kyle, Kenny gets angry that no one cares when he dies. He turns to leave Stan crying but gets crushed by someone lowering a piano from a higher floor.
Oops.
The death in Chicken Lover is next. In this episode, Kenny barely survives 3 near-death experiences throughout the episode, and it looked like he would leave the episode unscathed. However, during the ending credits, while he's within a crowd of people, a tree tips over and crushes him. Moving on to City on the Edge of Forever flashbacks. While stuck on a bus on the edge of a cliff, the students spend their time telling flashback stories. Well, Cartman's story involves the Fonz jumping over a bunch of buses, but as he does this, he crushes Kenny into a wall. This is the first death in this section where he is crushed between two things rather than being crushed from above. Moving on to the death in Trapper Keeper. During this episode, Cartman gets a new Trapper Keeper that fuses with him, becoming a giant monster. When the boys try to go help Cartman, Kenny prepares to break down his door. However, the Trapper Keeper Cartman combo bursts through the door and crushes Kenny against the wall. The episode Cartman's Silly Hate Crime 2000 is next. In this episode, Kenny is used as a Cartman crash test dummy on a sled. When sliding down a hill, he is launched off the sled and slams into a tree. Then, a ton of bricks, also on the sled, crush him against that tree. This flattened him like a pancake, and you could say that this death hit him like a ton of bricks. Moving on to the episode Conjoined Fetus Lady, where the South Park dodgeball team makes it to the national championships against China. During the dodgeball match, the entire team is easily destroyed by the Chinese opponents. One Chinese dodgeball player throws a dodgeball at Kenny, and the force of the ball crushes Kenny against the wall. Our next crushing death belongs to the episode Chef's Chocolate Salty Balls. When the Sundance Movie Festival moves to town, it corrupts South Park. Kenny is seen playing outside what is assumed to be a quiet movie theater, but this doesn't last long. Hundreds of occupants burst through the doors and start to crush him underfoot, trampling poor Kenny with hundreds of pairs of shoes.
Oh my god! I found a penny! You bastard!
In a similar situation, the episode Clubhouses ranks next. After Cartman gets jealous of Kyle and Stan's clubhouse, Cartman and Kenny create their own. Kenny inadvertently causes his own death by allowing the woman he brought to the clubhouse to bring their friends. When too many people come into the clubhouse, he is trampled to death by a mosh pit. Next we have the death in Volcano. While on a hunting trip with Stan's Uncle Jimbo and his friend Ned, a volcano is due to erupt. When the volcano erupts, a giant flaming boulder lands in front of Kenny, almost killing him. However, he's killed immediately after, when it sets his arm on fire, rolls over, and crushes him. The next death comes from Prehistoric Iceman. When Stan and Kyle find a man frozen in ice, he is given to Dr. Mephisto to unfreeze. While at the exhibit, Kenny gets caught in a conveyor belt and is crushed underneath it. He's then spit out onto the conveyor belt again, flat as a pancake, and left on the belt as it continues to work. The episode Something You Can Do With Your Finger is next. When Kenny and the rest of the boys decide to make a boy band, they manage to land a gig at the mall. While preparing to start off their set, Kenny stands too close to a descending elevator and is crushed to death. And finally, rounding out this category, we have the episode The Succubus. While trying to stop Chef's marriage to Veronica, due to her succubus origins, the tape recorder they need to defeat her jams. Kenny tries to fix the tape recorder, but Veronica turns into her demon form and crushes Kenny underfoot. Being crushed into a bloody paste is definitely a gruesome way to go. Our next category is He's Been Impaled, when Kenny is killed by being impaled on or by a sharp object. Starting out this section, we have the episode Mysterion Rises. While trying to deal with a cult, Mysterion is killed. While the cult advances on Kenny, the leader pulls out a switchblade and is stabbed in the chest. The next episode is Cow Days. After losing too much money at the Cow Day Festival, the boys force Cartman to participate in a bull riding contest. Cartman gets a small amount of brain damage, but continues to ride bulls for the money thanks to his friends. During one of the bull rides, the bull bursts through the containment and impales Kenny on his horns as he rides off. Moving on to the episode Tom's Rhinoplasty. When the new substitute teacher, Miss Ellen, starts to make Wendy jealous, she pays a bunch of Iraqi men to claim that Ellen was an Iraqi fugitive. While she's struggling against them, she throws one of their swords, which flies through the classroom and pins Kenny through the face and into the wall. Much like the dodgeball death earlier, the camera work for this death is worth pointing out. Kenny's death in Coon vs. Coon and Friends is next. After Kenny and company are sent to oblivion, Kenny knows what he needs to do. He jumps off a cliff into a large pit of metal spikes, impaling him in a multitude of places. Kenny complains about how much pain this causes him, and because of how many places he's impaled through, this one definitely ranks as worse. Moving on to Cartman Land. After gaining a massive inheritance from his deceased grandmother, Cartman fulfills his lifelong dream of owning an amusement park. While riding on one of Cartman's roller coasters, Kenny stands up when he's supposed to be sitting in the cart. While standing, a stray metal bar impales him through the face and leaves him continuing on the ride. While this death is entirely Kenny's fault, it was still a really gruesome one to watch. And finally, rounding out this category is the death from the episode Weight Gain 4000. When Cartman wins an essay contest, Kathy Lee Gifford comes to town and Mr. Garrison wants her dead. While attempting to kill the star, he fires a round that hits Kenny, causing him to go flying and impaling himself onto a flagpole through the skull. This death is relatively iconic, even being recreated by Rob Schneider later in the series. Moving on to our next category, we have Rain of Bullets, where Kenny is killed by guns and bullets. The least gruesome in this category is from the episode The Entity. While trying to send Kyle's cousin, also named Kyle, back to Connecticut, they're stopped by the TSA. The TSA agent finds toenail clippers in Kenny's bag and claims he's a terrorist, shooting him through the head. The episode The List is next. In this episode, the 4th grade girls create a secret list ranking the boys from cutest to ugliest. Wendy helps Stan steal the list and is hunted down by Bebe, who shoots at her. However, the bullet misses them and instead ricochets and shoots Kenny through the back of the head while eating dinner. Next is the death from the episode Damien. When the son of Satan, Damien, comes to South Park, Satan and Jesus start up the ultimate pay-per-view boxing match. Damien turns Kenny into a duck-billed platypus, which, being a rare animal, Stan's Uncle Jimbo shoots him. He's left with 2 bullet holes in the head and decapitated, which is really brutal. Moving on to the episode Quintuplets 2000. During a long line of events, Kenny learns how to sing opera really well and travels to Romania with his mother. The United States government tries to get them back to America alive, but accidentally kills him when an agent's gun misfires. This death is gruesome due to the sheer volume of bullet holes that Kenny is left with when the gun unloads. In a similar situation, the episode Merry Christmas, Charlie Manson ranks next. While at Cartman's grandma's house, Charles Manson shows up and tries to change his ways. The police surround the house, and when Charles sends Kenny out with a white flag, he's quickly gunned down by the cops.
Look out, he's got a white flag!
We definitely had to rank this one as more gruesome, because Kenny was killed by hundreds of shots. Moving on to Osama bin Laden has farty pants. The boys go to Afghanistan to return a goat that they were sent by their Afghani counterparts. While in Afghanistan, both Kenny and his counterpart are killed by an overhead airstrike, filled with bullets and left in the dust. Rounding out this category is a more recent episode, the Pandemic Special. After the police get defunded because of recent events and the teachers don't want to work, Mayor McDaniels has the police become the new teachers. This causes the school to be quarantined for 2 weeks, although Stan and the crew manage to lead an escape effort. The mayor gives them their weaponry back, and they chase down the kids, including Kenny. While chasing the boy, they gun him down from a tank, leaving him dead in the streets. Our next category is explosive deaths, which is pretty self-explanatory. Kenny gets killed because of an explosion. The weakest explosion in this category is in Korn's groovy Pirate Ghost Mystery. While part of a costume contest, Kenny dresses up as ED-209 from the RoboCop franchise. Dejected after losing, he starts to walk away, but in an homage to Star Wars, his legs get tied up by spaceships, and he's dropped to the ground, carpet-bombed by them. Next up, we have Roger Ebert should lay off the fatty foods. The boys go on a field trip to the planetarium, only to realize that the stars cause a hypnotic effect. They test the hypnotism on Kenny, and when they turn up the dial to its highest point, next is the episode WTF. When the boys decide to start their own professional wrestling ring, it draws the attraction of Vince McMahon, which angers their wrestling teacher, Mr. Connors. He decides to fire a rocket launcher at Vince, but the rocket malfunctions and drops into the ring, where Kenny picks it up. The rocket then launches into the air, and Kenny explodes into a mass of fireworks. The episode Summer Sucks is next. This death takes place in a flashback to the earlier years of the boys' friendship. While in preschool or kindergarten, Kenny was holding onto a firework for too long, causing an explosion. This explosion leaves him dismembered, and as a small child, it's definitely gruesome. Now we have Chef Goes Nanners. Chef gets angry over the South Park flag, which he sees as heavily racist. Kenny is at Kyle's house and starts chowing down on antacid tablets he thought were mints. After eating a bunch, he drinks some water and the tablets activate, inflating him with white foam. He then explodes from the inside. And finally, rounding out this category, we have the episode It's Christmas in Canada. When Kyle goes to Canada to rescue Ike, Kenny goes along. When they manage to reach the Prime Minister of Canada, he proves himself to be a brutal dictator. To prove that he won't repeal any laws, he shoots a laser beam at Kenny, causing him to explode in blood everywhere. It's pretty easy to see why this one gets ranked as the most gruesome in this category, as he pretty much becomes Bloody Rain. Following the explosions, we now have the category Burn Kenny Burn, where Kenny dies from fire, lava, or other incinerations. The episode Spontaneous Combustion starts this section out. The episode title and this death are one and the same. While walking down the street, Kenny spontaneously combusts from holding in his fart too long, and he kind of just melts into a pile of ash randomly. In the episode The Red Badge of Gayness, Cartman, excited to be part of the Civil War reenactment, leads the Confederacy to beat the Union. While doing so, the reenactors march on our towns to raid them for schmorschnaps. The National Guard attempts to stop them. They fire a road flare as a warning, but it comes down and hits Kenny, burning him alive. The third and final death in this category goes to Towley. In this episode, the boys meet the titular character, Towley, while playing their Okama Game Sphere. They eventually end up above a pile of lava. Kenny attempts to save the Game Sphere, but ends up falling into the lava himself, being melted alive by the extremely hot substance. Our next category is Bloody Bits and Bobs, where Kenny is left in pieces, big or small, through dismemberment. Starting out, we have the episode Spooky Fish. When Stan gets a goldfish from an alternate evil dimension, it starts killing people. The goldfish pulls Kenny into his water bowl and shreds him until he's filled the whole bowl with blood. Speaking of being torn apart, next is the Mexican staring frog of Sri Lanka. After Jimbo and Ned make up fake stories about the Vietnam War, the boys make up a story about the Mexican staring frog of Sri Lanka. They then go to the talk show Jesus and Pals, which ends up with a riot in the stands because the producer wants them to lie to Jesus. This riot ends with Kenny being split in two by the audience. In the episode Big Gay Al's Big Gay Boat Ride, during a football game against the Middle Park Cowboys, two of the players hold Kenny by the arms. They then pull away and tear his arms out of his sockets, and a third player tackles Kenny, tearing off his head. This is all done by other children, which makes it especially dark. In the episode Terrence and Philip Behind the Blow, when Terrence and Philip break up, the boys try to bring the two back together. While doing so, environmentalists are trying to get them to set up a brainwashing festival. Wanting to keep the pressure on the boys, the environmentalists chop Kenny's limbs off with one fell swoop, leaving him in the road. This lands here because of how he died from the blood loss. We could even hear him screaming. Rounding out this section is Zombie Kenny's death in Pink Eye. After being crushed by a satellite and having soy sauce in his embalming fluid, Kenny comes back as a zombie. After starting a zombie epidemic, the boys have to stop the zombies by killing the original, that being Kenny. Kyle grabs a chainsaw and splits him in half, leaving him in two pieces and stopping the outbreak. Now, if those last deaths weren't bad, well, we're now at our final category. These are the cruel deaths. Starting off this section is the episode Tweak vs. Craig. This death happens to Kenny while he's in shop class. He's thrown against a wall and falls into a box filled with rusty nails face first. That is pretty torturous. Next up, we have Chinpokomon. When a new Japanese anime craze comes to South Park, the boys get really into it. They get brainwashed by Chinpokomon Camp to the point that they plan to go attack Pearl Harbor. By the end of the episode, when the fads have blown over, Kenny has a seizure and dies with rats bursting through his stomach, dying at the bus stop. In the episode Best Friends Forever, Kenny is the first person in town to get a PSP and reaches level 60 in a video game called Heaven vs. Hell. He is then run over by an ice cream truck and sent to heaven, but is kept alive in a vegetative state via the use of a feeding tube. He eventually has his feeding tube removed and is left to die after his wishes were violated. In the episode Worldwide Recorder Concert, the children go to Arkansas for the concert and learn about the brown note. During the concert, they play the brown note and cause a lot of people to defecate. This affects Kenny to the point where he dies from the amount of stuff that left his body. This is, without a doubt, a terrible way to go. In the episode The Jeffersons, the eponymous Mr. Jefferson moves to town. The boys devise a plan to save his son Blanket. Kenny dresses up as Blanket, which causes Mr. Jefferson to confuse him for his son. He then tosses Kenny into the air, but does it too high and shoots him into the ceiling, leaving him stuck in the ceiling and bloody. In the episode The Poor Kid, when Kenny's parents are arrested, Kenny and his siblings, Karen and Kevin, are put into the foster system. However, by the end of the episode, he moves back to the school, which makes Cartman happy, but he doesn't stay for long. A giant reptilian bird breaks through the roof of the school and grabs Kenny, slamming him against a few walls and swallowing him. In the episode Proper Condom Use, the students are separated and schooled on adult subjects to teach the children to be more mature. However, the female teacher causes the girls to be defensive towards the boys, which leads to Kenny dying. Bebe once again kills Kenny by throwing a sharp boomerang that lodges into his skull and splits his face in half. In the classic episode An Elephant Makes Love to a Pig, the boys go to Dr. Mephisto so he can breed a smaller elephant. He creates a mutant clone of Stan. This clone knocks Kenny into a microwave and it turns on, cooking Kenny until he dies. Being cooked to death is definitely a way that no one would like to go out. Speaking of cooking, next up is the episode Cartman's Mom is Still a Dirty S. When the power at the hospital Dr. Mephisto is in goes out, Kenny needs to fix it. He goes out into the snowstorm and finds what the problem is with the electricity. Knowing that the hospital needs power, he grabs the 2 live wires and electrocutes himself to death to give the hospital the power it needs. We can't forget about the South Park movie, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. Kenny dies in a spectacular fashion, befitting the spectacle of the movie. He tries to light his farts on fire, which causes intense burns across his body and sends him to the emergency room. While in surgery, the nurse replaces his heart with a baked potato, which causes him to explode when he finds out. This one is worse than electrocution simply because of the severe burns, followed by the baked potato. What an absolutely spectacular way to die. From flame-based burns to road burns, 4th grade takes the next spot on our list. When the boys move up to 4th grade, they realize that they took 3rd grade for granted, making them want to go back. They try to create a time machine using Timmy's wheelchair and have Kenny test it. Instead of sending him back in time, Timmy drags him across the asphalt, grinding his face and body down until he's little more than a husk. The amount of pain that Kenny went through for this kill is definitely in the upper echelon, so it definitely earns our number 4 spot. But taking our bronze medal of Gruesome is Sexual Harassment Panda. When the titular mascot comes to South Park and teaches the students, Cartman sues Stan. This causes a flurry of lawsuits, so the boys have to go find the panda and make him change his message. When they get to the island, Kenny is given a magnet while a fan is nearby. This pulls Kenny into the fan, shredding him into a million pieces and scattering amongst the wind. Taking our silver medal of Gruesome is the episode Chef Aid. When Chef tries to sue a music company for stealing a song, they sue him instead. Chef's friends, including Elton John and Ozzy Osbourne, set up a concert to raise money so Chef can counter-sue. While on stage, Ozzy Osbourne grabs Kenny and bites his head off. This is all obviously in reference to some of his stage shows. Frankly, having your head bitten off by Ozzy Osbourne makes your death a shoo-in for the silver medal of Gruesome. But finally, we have to give the gold medal of Gruesome to the classic Cartman Gets an Anal Probe. This is the very first death in the series and is the most like a Rube Goldberg machine. Kenny is blasted by a UFO, which launches him into the street only to be trampled by cows. After the cows trample him, he is run over and killed by Bar Brady. Now, this isn't enough to grab gold, but after his death, he is dismembered and eaten by rats. This death is a classic and no doubt grabs the gold, considering how much effort went into killing him. Simply put, they set the bar very high with this first death. But let us know in the comments section if you agree with our ranking, and tell us what you think is the most gruesome Kenny McCormick death. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge our most gruesome playlist, where we break down the most gruesome moments in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.